NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg makes his first visit to Kyiv since the war began. He says the main focus of the alliance is to ensure that Ukraine prevails.
With accusations of spy ships and saboteurs, Norway and Sweden are on high alert for Russian espionage in the North Sea. Thousands of Sudanese fled their capital city as a second ceasefire in the six-day clash between warring generals failed to hold.
His first visit to Kyiv since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion, NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg made a surprise trip to Ukraine's capital on Thursday to reiterate his full support for Kyiv's bid to join the alliance. But President Volodymyr Zelensky says the US-led association needs to act more decisively.
Немає жодного об'єктивного бар'єру, який перешкоджав би ухваленню політичних рішень про запрошення України в альянс. І саме зараз, коли більшість людей в країнах НАТО і більшість українців підтримують вступ нашої держави в альянс, час для відповідних рішень.
The main focus of the alliance of NATO allies now is to ensure that Ukraine prevails, is to ensure that Ukraine continues to be a sovereign, independent, democratic nation in Europe, because that's the only way to also have a meaningful discussion about Ukraine's future membership.
Ukraine applied for fast-track NATO membership in September after Moscow warned it would retaliate if Kyiv were to join. But Stoltenberg says it will never compromise with Russia on Ukraine's sovereignty. NATO countries have been the biggest providers of military assistance to the war-torn country.
The governments of Sweden and Norway are monitoring possible Russian spy missions in the North Sea. A documentary broadcast by Nordic public television channels accuses Russia of spying and acts of sabotage in the region. As it waits to join NATO, Sweden is on alert.
Det här bekräftar det vi har vetat under lång tid, att Ryssland inte bara nu är ett akut hot mot Ukrainas säkerhet och fred och frihet, utan också är ett latent hot mot andra länder i vår närhet, inklusive oss själva. Och som sagt, det är inget nytt för oss, utan det är för detta vi dimensionerar den svenska försvarsmakten. Och sen så händer det ibland händelser som kräver att vi agerar tillbaka, men det kommer jag inte gå in på just nu.
Russia denies the spying accusations. President Vladimir Putin's spokesman calls instead for more attention to the investigation into sabotage of the Nord Stream gas pipelines.
Эти средства массовой информации упомянутых стран, они ошиблись в своем расследовании. Они опять беспочвенно предпочитают во всем обвинять Россию. Мы предпочли бы, чтобы они больше внимания уделяли теме террористического акта на северных потоках и теме необходимости прозрачного, срочного и широкого международного расследования этих беспрецедентных террористических актов саботажа.
Russia feels it was kept in the dark by Nordic countries over Nord Stream, a position that's unlikely to change in the light of espionage accusations.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has landed in Havana for talks on boosting cooperation and friendship ties. This after Lavrov's 4-hour whirlwind visit to Nicaragua amid his Latin America tour, where he met with President Daniel Ortega. The trip comes on the heels of an announcement from Washington that it's issuing new sanctions against 3 Nicaraguan judges. Lavrov stressed the need for Russia's allies to join forces and stand up to the US.
Многополярность – это веление времени, это объективный исторический процесс. Остановить его невозможно, хотя коллективный Запад, сплотившийся под зонтиком американской так называемой исключительности, пытается это сделать.
Ortega and Lavrov downplayed the impact of US sanctions on officials from both their countries. In February, Ortega's government stripped 222 exiled opponents of their nationality. Russia is one of Nicaragua's key trading partners and provides it wheat, public buses, taxi cabs and the COVID-19 vaccine Sputnik. Officials say a meeting between Lavrov and President Miguel Diaz-Canel might be on the table. It comes a day after Diaz-Canel was re-elected by the National Assembly for a second 5-year term.
From April the 24th, Bulgaria will ban imports of Ukrainian grain. It's the fourth EU member to introduce a unilateral ban to protect its own harvests and cereal markets, a trend causing embarrassment in Brussels, which aims to project a supportive stance towards the war-torn country. But for Bulgaria and others, charity begins at home.
Имаме продукция за няколко милиарда, която считаме, че ако не вземем допълнителни мерки, трудно ще реализираме на пазара и ще търпим много сериозни загуби.
Romania is also considering a ban. For the moment, its Minister of Agriculture has announced that Romania will intensify checks on grain imported from Ukraine. Trucks will be sealed and monitored by GPS during transit through the country.
Am rugat ministrul ucrainian să folosească toate mijloacele pe care le are la dispoziție pentru ca agenții economici din Ucraina să reducă exportul de cereale și plante oleaginoase către România.
The EU has rushed to quell the revolt, arguing for a common European approach as customs policy should be united across the bloc.
You will recall that we have already provided a support package of 56.3 million euros for the most affected farmers, and we are now preparing a second financial support package of 100 million euros.
On Wednesday, Poland decided to partially lift its ban, but only to allow transit across its territory, not the sale of Ukrainian grain on it. Hundreds of trucks laden with Ukrainian grain had been stranded at the border.
Russian forces continue to use Shahed drones and other lower precision systems to offset the degradation of Russian precision munition supply, says the Institute for the Study of War. Ukrainian Air Force spokesperson Colonel Yuri Ignat noted that Russia has used almost all of its strategic missile stockpile since the 11th of September last year, and that Ukrainian forces have shot down 750 of the total of 850 missiles that Russian forces have launched at Ukraine during this period. Ignat noted that Russian forces have switched to cheaper and shorter-range options such as guided aerial bombs and have removed HA-50 type missiles from storage for restoration. Some Russian milbloggers claim that Russian forces are using FAB air-dropped bombs to destroy Ukrainian fortified areas in Bakhmut. The Institute for the Study of War's current control of terrain estimate shows that Russian assessed advances and claimed territory amount to almost 88% of Bakhmut. Russian forces continued ground attacks in and around town. Milbloggers claimed that Wagner Group forces made significant progress in urban areas in northwestern Bakhmut and have taken control of the area north of Vesela Street, including the territory of Bakhmut Hospital No. 2. The commander of the Ukrainian land forces, Oleksandr Syrsky, stated that amid heavy fighting in the Donetsk region, Ukraine is holding its ground and holding back the enemy's offensive in Bakhmut.
Fighting in Sudan enters its sixth day as a ceasefire between the army and the powerful paramilitary group, the Rapid Support Forces, failed. This is the second ceasefire they've broken. Thousands of residents have fled the capital Khartoum, so have some 320 soldiers who were detained in neighbouring Chad.
J'ai déjà 320 militaires qui sont déjà dans notre territoire. Ça, c'est des militaires. Et sans doute, les civils, il y en a. Donc, nous sommes en train de les accueillir et de prendre toutes les dispositions pour qu'ils soient aussi bien cantonnés.
The violent clashes have already left more than 270 civilians dead and more than 2,000 injured, according to the World Health Organization. Germany and Japan are reportedly planning the evacuation of their citizens. The UN will meet on Thursday with the African Union, the Arab League and representatives of other organizations to discuss the situation in Sudan.
At least 70 people were killed and 110 more wounded in a crowd crush in the Yemeni capital Sana'a during a distribution of financial aid. The accident took place when hundreds of people gathered at a school to receive money handed out by merchants during Ramadan. The Houthi-run Interior Ministry's spokesperson blamed the disaster on the random distribution of funds without coordination with local authorities. Those responsible for the event were detained and an investigation is underway.
A fiery response to French President Emmanuel Macron's pension reforms. Dozens of railway workers lit this bonfire outside of Paris's Gare de Lyon station on Thursday. Several unions have called for a nationwide rail strike in a bid to reverse the government's decision to raise the retirement age from 62 to 64.
Justement de montrer que ça continue. Il est hors de question qu'on laisse passer cette réforme. Donc ça va prendre plein de formes. Personne ne croit qu'il n'y a pas d'argent. Jamais la France a été aussi riche. Jamais les multinationales en France ont été aussi riches. Le problème, c'est une question de répartition de richesses.
Moving southwest to the city of Lyon, hundreds of railway workers rallied outside a Part 2 station behind a banner boasting the words "until withdrawal." While Macron is making a concerted effort to move on after the legislation was approved by the Constitutional Council last week, opponents to the law are standing firm. Macron's trip to a school in Ganges in the southwest brought hundreds of demonstrators to the streets.
Over 700 flights have been cancelled at Germany's Düsseldorf, Hamburg and Cologne-Bonn airports due to a walkout by security staff. They're protesting the cost of living crisis and demanding pay increases for nights, weekends and public holidays. The trade union Verdi has called on security staff at Stuttgart Airport to join the walkouts on Friday, prompting the airport to cancel all departures. German Rail and Transport Union EVG has also called for a strike on Friday, which is expected to last from 3 to 11 a.m.